Hello, Bainbridge. I'm Stefan Goldby, President and CEO of the Bainbridge Island Chamber of Commerce. Ahead of this year's upcoming elections, welcome to this community conversation with one of the candidates for City Council, Leslie Schneider. In the interests of fairness, we are asking all candidates the same 12 questions that my knowledgeable chamber members have helped us write, though their answers may lead to individualized follow-ups or requests for clarification. Each candidate has up to 45 minutes to answer all 12 questions, but no more than a minute will be added if they do run out of time. None of the candidates have seen the questions in advance, and their answers will be presented in full. With all that in mind, hello, Leslie.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
I'm very grateful to be here.
Are you sitting comfortably?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Then I'll begin. Okay, question one. Could you describe your experience working with different stakeholders, businesses, community organizations, and residents in our community on Bainbridge Island?
Well, so one thing that pops to mind in working with the chamber was the first round of a subcommittee that of council members, and I think the chamber designated the other ones that we worked with on the waste management or the sort of the anti-plastics that came up with the initial draft. So that was, I don't know, 3-ish meetings in the summer before we passed that ordinance for the first time. And working with stakeholder groups more generally. I'm also a liaison to the chamber board. And so that's a once-a-month meeting. And I'm just really grateful that we have a tighter connection between council and the chamber these days. So I'm also on I guess the Climate Change Advisory Committee doesn't really matter because that's not technically a stakeholder group. I mean, I meet with Housing Resources Bainbridge sort of individually frequently. I meet with affordable housing advocates frequently, architects, for instance, that are working with a particular project, and that happens ad hoc, but many times a year. And yeah, I'll call it at that. I mean, I've just trying to think of particular stakeholder groups, and
I think it's fair to say you've been on city council, and thus you do talk to many stakeholder groups.
Right. Yeah, and I'm very available. I had regular office hours before COVID, and I just decided that I would just focus on individual appointments after that. And so I don't ever turn down anybody who wants to talk with me directly.
So what personally makes you want to be a city council member for the next 4 years?
So I really believe that local government is kind of leading the way in climate change, for livability. I mean, this is really where the rubber meets the road, right? I mean, literally and figuratively. We can do so much. I mean, there's limits of what government can do, and we certainly do it slowly, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So my desire to be on council for the next 4 years is basically to continue the work that I've already been doing. I've been working super hard on sustainable transportation options. That's one of my big priorities. And then the other one is affordable housing. And then the third one, which is really overarching both of those two, is climate change. So, with climate change, you want to reduce carbon, but you need to do it fairly equitably. I mean, my basic thing is that communities should be work where you live where you work. That kind of hits equity issues, it hits traffic issues and carbon footprint and all. I'm also really focused on modest living. You know, I live in a 1,200 square foot home that's downtown, and so I don't have to drive a whole lot. And I know everybody can't or doesn't want to live that way, but I find it, I value it that I can live that way and be a representative for that way of life, saying, hey, it's the water's great. Come on in.
So what would you say are the top 3 specific current concerns that you hear from islanders?
So, I mean, the big issues are affordable housing. But that's maybe from an organizational point of view. I mean, from individuals.
And specifically within affordable housing, what is the concern?
Well, the concern is that we're not going in the right direction on this island. You know, we're gentrifying. There's you know, our demographics we're older, richer. You know, we might end up a gated community if we don't do something about it. So we're losing families. We have workforce issues. The folks that we need to perform the services that we need on the island, you know, folks are coming in, you know, the people who can't afford to live here are driving here sometimes from Kitsap County, just hours to get here. And then a lot of times there just aren't enough workers available who are willing to do that long haul. So, I mean, we've certainly, with my relationship with the Chamber, I've heard a lot from individual business owners who just can't hire the people that they need to work here. So I'm really grateful that now the businesses are getting behind affordable housing as an important need to help balance who we are as an island.
So then, beyond affordable housing, what are 2 other things that you hear from constituents?
Well, so I hear a lot about sustainable transportation, maybe more than other council members, because, you know, I've been involved in it for so long, and so they know that I'm probably their biggest advocate on council. So, you know, I hear from a lot of folks who want sort of better bicycle infrastructure, better local transit, you know, like a circulator and whatnot. So I guess the biggest thing, I feel very proud of having fought for funding first to get a sustainable transportation coordinator or manager. I can't remember what we're calling her now, but she just got introduced to council last night, and that was thrilling. But I was able to be in on the interview process for that, and so I think we're making progress. For me, the next thing that needs to happen is to sort of protect that sustainable transportation plan, is to, you know, get an advisory committee back together for that. So that's kind of my next challenge on that front.
That's 2.
2 what?
That's 2 concerns specifically you've heard. Would you say those are the principal 2, or do you have a third?
Oh, well, honestly, I specifically received a lot of comments from folks when we lowered speed limits on the island. That was a very touchy issue. And, you know, I was solidly behind reducing speed limits. So it's interesting to, you know, hear from folks about it. And these were people that I knew and love and respect and all that. I just don't agree. But that was a lot of pushback on something that council did.
Okay, so in the Winslow sub-area plan and the comprehensive plan, we have a generational opportunity to plot the path forward for the next 20 years on the island. What are the top 3 things you think those documents must create for Bainbridge?
Okay, the documents again were the Winslow sub-area plan and the comp plan update.
Plan.
Okay.
Yeah, taken together.
So looking at the Winslow sub-area plan specifically, I kind of divvy it up in my mind as we have our responsibility to state requirements, and then we have responsibility to our own priorities. And so, we must and will change allowable densities in Winslow so that we can offer the potential for more housing types and greater density for more housing. I don't think that's going to be too hard to do. I don't think that's going to be terribly controversial. But then on top of that, we also need to go further and not just create the potential for more housing, but actually create more affordable housing. And that's going to require subsidy, incentives. So we need to get that right. And then we also have the opportunity to expand the boundaries of Winslow. And I haven't made up a complete decision yet, but the alternatives are just recently out there. And I kind of like the idea of expanding the boundaries of Winslow to accommodate, for instance, the sewer district or the sewer areas. But we don't have enough information on that yet to know what it actually means. And then with the comp plan, similarly, we have some obligations for state requirements. And going beyond that, I just want to make really sure that we are looking at potentially updating elements that are sort of optional for us. So the economic element, for instance, I would love to see an acknowledgement of what is it that we need on the island to sort of round out. It's referred to generally as like circular economy. I don't know how familiar that term is with most people, but what do we do with our waste? Right now we send it off the island and put it on a train and send it down to Oregon, and we could do better than that. So what is it that we need on the island? We need a laundromat, at least one, if not multiple. And so, I look forward to, for instance, working with the chamber to figure out where we might go with that. I'm meeting with another resident to look at what's called donut economics. Kate, I'm forgetting her name now. Not coming to mind. But anyway, an economist from the UK is talking about donut economics, which is balancing the needs of people so that you're serving all people's needs with the limits of the environment. And so that you don't want people falling into the hole of the donut and not getting what they need. And you don't want to expand. You don't want to be overreaching what the environment can sustain. So that's kind of the bottom line behind that. What was your question again?
What are the things that must come out of the comp and the sub-area plan?
You know what? There was somebody wrote in, a constituent, a resident wrote in recently that we really ought to keep our the comp plan is somewhat of an inspirational document. It's aspirational. We're not required to do everything that's in the comp plan because oftentimes we can't. We can't afford it, or it's just it tends to be kind of a wish list. So one of the things I think was a good idea that came out of this inquiry from someone is to kind of look at what that would take financially, and is that a priority over other things that also are going to cost a lot of funding from the city, and the funding for the city has to come from people, and there's a limit to what we can do. So while I think that it's good that the comp plan is aspirational, I think also there could be a bit of realism, and we do have periodic updates of it. So when new technology comes in that kind of changes the game and so forth, we can accommodate for that and kind of, move our priorities around. So I guess, I don't know if that's a must have, but I think it would help people understand what we can do versus what we would like to do.
So to get very specific, if you could change one thing in the city's zoning code, what would it be?
Well, one thing, without having thought about it a long time, I'll tell you what comes to mind quickly. And, I'll probably get into trouble for this, but parking requirements. And I don't know what difference it would make if we reduced or even eliminated parking requirements, but I know that that's what's going on in cities large and small around the nation, because I think the assumption there is that developers kind of know their market, and if they think they can if they can sell something with less parking is hugely expensive. And so for making housing affordable, it's going the wrong way. And then, but also with that, we have to provide transportation alternatives. So, I mean, I guess that's just a perspective shift that I think we're probably going to be doing. And certainly it might not be as important as upping the density of zoning in Winslow. But I think that's also something we're going to do. And I just, so that's city code, you're saying. Yeah. Without any preparation, I'll stick with that.
That's the point of not saying the questions in advance, right?
Right.
So within the city's housing action plan is contained almost universal agreement that housing diversity and supply on the island needs to change for the sake of our community. But what kinds of housing do you think are the most important, and why? Well,
so smaller homes, I think that, meets with us all needing to live more modestly. So, we're not going to be able to stop McMansions from happening out in other areas. But, I live in an attached home. I'm side by side with a neighbor, and like a townhome. And I think we can allow a lot more of that. I think multifamily housing in general, multifamily doesn't really describe much about it, other than the fact that, you are in closer proximity to your neighbors, and homes are attached. But I saw an idea where this is in the East Coast somewhere. Let's say North Carolina. I'm not sure, but a market rate developer took over a big church that was for sale and carved it up into a lot of very small units that were connected with common areas, and then these were rented at market rate. So your own private space was quite reduced, but then you had these common areas to sort of expand your life out into. And I think that we need to allow, if not incentivize for that. It provides transitional housing. I mean, my son is a mid-20s. He kind of lives in that anyway, affordable housing in Vail, where, he's going to be teaching skiing and whatnot. So yeah, we need to incentivize many, existing known types of smaller housing and attached housing, but also looking into other innovative housing types. And personally, I live in co-housing, where not only are our homes smaller and attached, but we also share, rather generous common spaces, which I think is really important for living a big life in smaller space.
With more and more of the island's workforce coming to work over the Agate Pass Bridge, how would you try to reimagine transportation on Bainbridge? Car share, buses, ferries, bike lanes, or something else?
All of the above. So, this is kind of an equity issue where, we need to provide both the ability to live on the island so that you can be working on the island, and at the same time, realistically, that's not going to be enough. Even if we, which we are, I think, getting very ambitious and aggressive about providing affordable housing, it's still not going to completely take care of all of our workforce needs. So There's already some bus rapid transit planned up and down 305 that will, help. As I know, I've been very interested in looking at the idea of ferries, intra-county ferries, which I'm now thinking of calling water taxis, because the idea of more and shorter stops. So what if there was a water taxi, Silverdale, Bremerton, Bainbridge, and then back again? And, so we could really start to get to some of the workforce possibilities in Bremerton and further south in Kitsap. So ferries, mostly we want to get people on the island, but whatever we can do to get them here without being in a single occupancy car, is what I'm looking for.
I will ask them the follow-up question, which is a little redundant now, which is, do you formally support a new Bainbridge Bremerton foot ferry to better connect North and South Kitsap?
Well, so of course I do, but it's that I recently went to this demonstration of a water taxi in Des Moines, and so they did a pilot project, and now they're looking to get funding and figure out what making that service permanent might be. So Des Moines to Seattle. So I think that there's, this is not a new idea. This is not a Bainbridge specific idea. This is just kind of growing to use our sort of maritime highway more efficiently and whatnot. And then this demonstration was of an electric water taxi. So I'm just, it would be great if we had like a water taxi that just went Bainbridge to Bremerton, but I'm expanding on that idea to also include Silverdale. So I think that would help workforce issues, but it would also help, getting folks to Costco, without having to drive there. And it would be, a lovely outing. I mean, of course, you need that last mile of transit at the other end, right? So there are pieces that need to get coordinated. But yes, I absolutely, and not only do I support it, but being on the Kitsap Transit Board, I know that when Kitsap Transit was doing its long-term plan, there was a big survey that went out, and intra-county ferry service, additional intra-county ferry service ranked highly from all areas. So it's not just Bainbridge, it's, Holsbo, Bremerton, Silverdale, it ranked highly everywhere. So I'm pushing right now for Kitsap Transit to ask the legislature for funding for a feasibility study.
How can the needs of both Bainbridge's residents and visitors best be balanced?
Well, first, if we can keep those visitors out of cars, then that's kind of the best of both worlds, because we get them here to support our businesses and support our tax base, and keep our other taxes lowered. I mean, Bainbridge is a beautiful place. We're always going to have visitors, and we want visitors. I know that that's maybe a little bit controversial. I know that a lot of people would disagree with me about it, but I think we need to get them out of their cars, and we need to acknowledge the importance that they have in our economy. Yeah, and I think that's the main thing for me, is helping them enjoy our island in a more carbon neutral way.
Could you explain your understanding of the role of a city council member in promoting economic development?
I don't think there is any standard role for a council member promoting economic development. I think that it's kind of one of those things that doesn't get addressed very well, by council generally. We've been kind of hit and miss as far as having council members with a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce. We don't really talk about the economic element in the comp plan very much. I think it's changing now, and I hope that I've been part of that change. And actually, I think with my, when I was being interviewed to replace another council member at the very beginning back in 2018, I think one of the benefits I promoted and I think was seen as a positive was that I had a small business myself, and therefore, and my small business being co-working also helps other small businesses. It provides a venue for other businesses and therefore a relationship with a lot of other businesses. So it's been an important part of what I feel like I've brought to council, but we don't talk about it much. And so that's one of the things I've been promoting is we need to make sure that we revisit the economic element of the comp plan in this periodic update.
Well, I'm putting you on the spot. I'll give you a chance to do the same for me. What role can the Chamber play for our community to best help Bainbridge?
So workforce housing. I think that the Chamber can. So when we looked at the housing action plan, there was, good data there about what we needed to provide for affordable housing for workforce. But I kept asking questions, and other council members asked questions that those consultants weren't really able to answer. But I think the Chamber could. So for instance, if the Chamber could find out from the top 10, 15 employers on the island where I think we already know what the general incomes are of those, but where are they coming from? In an anonymized way, where are your people coming from? And therefore we can start to see, what is it that we need to put in place to either allow them to get here more easily, less expensively, or to live here, right? So I think gathering data and really presenting council with the needs of businesses. And then I also know that there are businesses that are at risk of leaving the island. And I personally think that would be a tragedy, but I don't know that council members are all that aware of what the risks are for us losing our businesses. And so I think we need to raise the awareness. Do we care? I hope we do. So yeah, I think data and presenting it in a concise, powerful way is what the Chamber can do. And then the other one is just what the Chamber's already doing, is providing us a partner to work with businesses in terms of ordinances. So when we want to regulate something like short-term rentals, the Chamber has really stepped up to provide us with a way to discuss that and find out what's a balanced way to do that.
Thank you. What strategies do you intend to use to promote civic engagement and boost citizen participation in our local government?
Well, in case I don't get a chance to say this in a different question, I'm going to skip the government part right now and kind of work backwards from that and say that, I really want to see Bainbridge take seriously what our gathering places are. So our placemaking and our, bringing more people together. And so, we've started to see that now with Moonlight Market and things like that. But I think that I'm working on the steering committee with the Project for Public Spaces to create placemaking on the island. So if we are bringing more people together more often, I think that more people will get involved in government. I think I don't know if and when this is going to happen, but I remember from the very beginning when I first got on council, I was asking about doing a, what are we calling it? So the police has a police academy, right? Where it opens it up for ordinary residents to go in and get a really deep understanding of what the police department does and what it deals with and whatnot. And so I would love to see that at the city hall level, where you could take a group of people and, get them to go through, what does planning do? What does public works do? How do we deal with budgeting? What does it mean for our public records requests? So I think I would love to see that. And I just honestly think right now we're a little overwhelmed with other priorities. So I'm going to keep bringing it up, but maybe we can deal with that in the next couple of years, with our budgeting next year for the biennium to come.
If you received $1 million grant to use for the city in any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
I would put it towards an electric shuttle circulator in Winslow and beyond, Winslow and connecting to the neighborhood centers. And actually, I think $1 million might end up being roughly what that would cost. I don't know yet, but I'm pushing for us to get information on what that would be. So we need to create the business plan for it. But I think we've been waiting for that for a long time. And I think we've seen examples of it. Like Bellevue right now has this thing called Bellhop, which is, it's a very small shuttle, but it's all electric and it's free. And it just goes around and around downtown Bellevue. And I don't know if our system would look like that, but we need to get that going. It's in the sustainable transportation plan. I think we're all waiting for it.
Cool. All right. Last question, and you have plenty of time left. Back in the real world, and with only limited time, money, and resources to tackle the challenges of Bainbridge life, can you name 3 specific actions you intend to take as a council member that you hope will define the legacy of a 4-year term of office?
So read the first part again.
You only have limited time, money, and resources. Okay. But in these next 4 years, what are 3 actions, specific actions you intend to take that you hope will define the legacy of this time on council?
So what are 3 actions that
you intend to take?
Yeah.
That you hope will be impactful?
I think so for climate change, we need to have more local sustainable energy. We need to have, it's probably solar power, but there's also, biodigester that we could use that would also take our waste and all that. So I would say, now, I don't know, like what one action would be. It's more like, where do you get your energy behind? But in general, it's going to be related to climate change. And specifically, I'm going to fight for that downtown shuttle as one, and I'm going to fight for local energy to get us, solar power and a biodigester. And then we need safer bicycle infrastructure. So I'm gonna call out those 3. They're pretty consistent with what I've been working on in the past. But yeah, I think it's going to be, sustainable transportation, and I mean, with housing, so I'm leaving out affordable housing in that statement. And I just want to comment that I think that I will continue to support affordable housing as a very, very high priority. And I think we're going in the right direction. So I don't feel like the ship needs to get turned on affordable housing. I really sort of support what we're doing. But the ship needs to turn on sustainable transportation, and the ship needs to turn on climate change, and specifically on green energy produced locally. So yeah.
All right, well, thank you for asking the Chamber's 12 questions. We appreciate your time, and for running for council. We appreciate everybody who steps forward to work for our community. Other than saying thank you, are there any words that you would like to close this interview with, council member?
Well, I want to just say that for me, in the past 5 years where I've been on council, there has been a huge shift in how the chamber has dealt with council in general. And so I'm really appreciative that you're taking such an active role. I think, I mean, just the newsletter that you put out is an amazing summary of what's going on in council. And I think that's a huge service. I think our city manager is doing a good job with communications as well. But I think it's really important that there's like a third party out there with a different point of view that is, that's providing the perspective on that. And yeah, I think I'll close with that. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Councilmember Leslie Schneider, who will be on the ballot unopposed in November. But thank you for the time. Thank you for your answers.
I appreciate it. Thank you.